Hi, in this Unity journey, this is step one of our journey, and we're going to be making a 2D platformer game where it's like side-scrolling action, kind of like Mario Brothers, Mario Land. And in the other video, I just showed you kind of like a target of what we're going to try to aim for. So we have to start off with some sprites that we're going to use, and I think the first sprite we're going to try to make here is our character, Mr. Peabody. So here I have a sprite where the background is transparent that I drew in Photoshop. And I'm going to take that and put it in my game. That's the first thing I need. And a way I could tell that the sprite is transparent background other than opening it, I can't really tell if the background's white or not, but this is a easy check I found that you could do is if you put the picture on your desktop and you could see the background of the desktop beyond the sprite, that means that it's transparent background. So to make transparent sprites, I used Photoshop, but Photoshop does cost money. So what you could also use to make the sprite is something called drawisland.com, and it's a drawing program that runs from in the browser. And it's kind of simple. All you have to do is pick your size, 400 by 400 maybe, pick the transparent background, then you can pick the size of your brush and the color of it. Oops, you gotta say change. Ah, come on now. Pick the color and choose. And then you could like draw your own transparent sprites. Here you can control the size of the brush tool. So in case you don't have Photoshop, you could use that to get your work done. So anyway, after you have, we're gonna have our main character first here. In this area here, this white area, this is outlining what's going to be shown on the game screen. And the game screen size could be controlled over here. So you could either pick one of these sizes or you could enter in a size of your own of width and height. Okay, so I have right now this size is set to 1024 by 768 and that's my screen size. So here I'm going to put in my sprite character and imagining that this is the game screen, he's really kind of big. So I'm using this tool over here, the rectangle tool, which is great for 2D because I could do a lot of operations at once. And I'm just going to shrink it down. I'm shrinking him down to a size that I guess would be like for the game screen when he's going to be playable if this is the whole screen. And now I'm going to say that this is going to be the size I'm going to keep him at. I could drag and drop that back in here. And now with the gray background, you see that this one is a prefab, which means I could use it over and over again and he'll be that size all the times I use him. Compared to this one, which is just the sprite image, which comes in at the original size every time. All right, so I do have him as a prefab, but before I actually use him as a prefab, I want to add the bones and everything. So let me take that out. Let me prepare this sprite so that I could animate the sprite using 2D animation. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is add the 2D animation package into my project. So I go to Window, Package Manager, and this says the packages that are currently in my project. And the 2D animation package is not there yet, so I just go to All, and right here is the 2D animation, and I say Install, and just give it a moment, and it's going to install the 2D animation package. Now, the reason we're going to install the 2D animation package is because we want to use bones, the sprite. So it's going ahead, and when it finishes installing the package, the screen over here, the package update. So should be finishing just about now. Okay, so now this changed. And over here on the In Project tab, you can see now we have the 2D animation package. You could see it here in the Package Manager window. And you could also see it in your project window under Packages that we have the 2D animation package. So now we're ready to edit the sprite. So select the sprite in the asset window, and then click on the Sprite Editor button. And this new window comes up. So right here in the top right corner, there's a little drop down. I'm going to select Bone Editor. And then I have a little tool window for bones. So I'm going to start off with these bones. These are connected bones. And there's going to be a bone right here. Then I'm just going to add this. These bones are going to control his face basically. And then I click, and the next bone, and then I click. And then when I don't want to add any more bones, I just right click. So these are connected bones. Then to this bone here, first I select it. I'm going to add a free bone, it's called. And just click on this second icon here, free bone. And I get a yellow line. And the yellow line, I'm going to have it extend down here to the foot. And just draw one for this foot. And then I'm going to have another free bone that connects to this foot. Okay, so now I have my 4 bones placed on my sprite. So the next thing I'm going to do is, well, I'm going to press apply. The next thing I'm going to do is go to the skin and weights geometry editor, because I have placed bones, but the bones have to actually change the sprite. So first thing, I need the computer to know about the sprite, so it's going to calculate the geometry. So I click geometry, generate, and then I just move these up a little bit. Okay, and then I press generate, and there's going to be like a mesh that's going to outline for the shapes that are there. So the higher subdivision goes, the more points on inside the mesh to control, and the lower it goes, the less. But this is good. I'll press apply. So now I have bones and I have a mesh for my sprite. And the last thing I need to do is associate the bones to the mesh. And I do that by assigning weights. So I click the weights button, and then I click the auto to auto calculate the weights for me. So basically you could see these bones have colors. The colors are chosen randomly. And then the bones will influence the area of the sprite that's the same color. See, so the red bone does the bottom, yellow bone does the top, and this bone does this whole foot, this bone does this whole foot. So there could be a time where, say that I move this foot and it's going to be kind of like in the same position as the face, and I want to know which one do I want to be in the front, the foot or the face. So if I want the face part to be in front, these two bones, all the bones, first of all, they come in at level 0. Bone depth of 0. See, I click on a bone and I could see its bone depth, that's 0. And then if I want a bone to be drawn behind something, then I just have to decrease its number. So if I want this bone to be drawn behind the face from 0, I could just subtract some value. So I'm just going to subtract 10. So, I could subtract 1, but as long as it's less than 0, it's behind the face. And then the same thing with this foot. I'll just say minus 10. And I'm picking 10, so just in case I ever have more things, I can decide in between them where they're going to go. But basically, the feet are behind the face if they're ever drawn in the same place. So they have the more negative number. And now I'll say apply. Okay, so I could close this window because for my Peabody sprite, I have now put bones and geometry and weights for the bones. So now I'm going to redrag them back into the game scene here. And now there's one more thing I have to do is I have to add a special script for controlling the bones. Now I don't have to write this script. This script is in the 2D animation package that we installed. So I'll say add component, and then to search for the script, I'll just type the word skin. And there it is, sprite skin. That's the script I want to attach. So I'm going to click on it. And then it attaches the script to my Peabody character. And automatically it read the Peabody character and noticed that all the bones that I put in, here's the bones. So all I have to do is click create bones, and then it'll assign all the bones. And now with the bones assigned using the sprite skin script, you can see over here that there's bones visible now in my sprite character, and when I move them, my sprite kind of bends to them, and the feet also will bend to them. So I could either click on the bone at the point to rotate the angle of a bone, or I could click on a bone like this to actually move the bone in space, like that. So these bones only affect the foot. So the feet could be like, I can move the feet and they don't stretch anything. They're selected at the base. But over here with these connected bones, if I kind of draw here, there's two bones for this face object. So if I take the connected bone and stretch it out, you see what could happen to him here by moving the bone. He kind of stretches, and that could be an effect I want, you know? And then after all those bone motions, if I kind of want to reset the positions, I could just say reset and put him back to the original position. So let's put him with his feet just there under his face as his natural position. And then that's the prefab I'm going to save like that with the feet close to his face. So now I have Mr. Peabody, and he's in the game, and I could control bones on him. And I guess I could add a script to him to move him around. So let me just do that. Okay, so it's still remembering the search I did for skin. Let me delete that. Now I see all the components. See, so I say add component. There's nothing in the search. And I can go down. I want to add a new script. And I'm going to call this script Peabody because it's for my Peabody guy. And I'll say create an add. And I'm just going to add a script to be able to control his movement. So now with the script here, I'll just double click on Peabody and Visual Studio will open up. Lining up these, and I'll just delete these. I'll start typing from scratch what I want. So let me think about what I want here. First thing is I want to be able to move, and I want the inspector window to have the ability to set the move speed in case it's too fast or slow. So I'll have a public float move speed. And by default, I'll try 3.5 as the move speed. And then with the move speed, I'm going to have to actually move my character. So I put that in the update, private void update. There you go. And in here, I'll have to read some kind of value. So let's read the horizontal axis. Float horizontal equals input class dot get axis. Which axis do we want to get? The horizontal axis. And that'll give us values from -1 to a +1. Okay, so if we're not moving the horizontal axis, the value will be 0. If we push the horizontal axis one way, it'll be -1, and the other way is a +1. So this horizontal axis, this command, this string horizontal, the reason that's going to work is because in the input manager, if we just open up that window here, edit project settings input, then we can look over here to the input manager, and here's some settings that Unity already put in here for us. And you can see here is the word horizontal, and this has commands for moving left and right, or for the values going -1 to 1. So you can see here we have the left and right arrow keys, or the A and the D keys as alternative keys. Okay, so that's 4 different keys we could use to control that. Then over here, we also see that it gets motion from all the joysticks on the x-axis of all the joysticks. So that means I could also use my joystick and move my joystick left and right. So this one axis command from the input manager has the left and right arrow keys, the A and D keys, and it reads the x-axis from a joystick. So this is great. That's why I'm using that command for reading my horizontal input. And we're going to use the horizontal input to move our character, Mr. Peabody, left and right. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll say, let's see, we'll just actually do a transform. This transform, this is referring to the object the script is attached to, and the script is attached to Mr. Peabody. So this transform is going to change the transform of Mr. Peabody. Translate. And then we say the axis that we want to translate on. You see how it says vector 3? So we want to actually translate on the vector 3 going to the right. And then times whatever the horizontal input is. So if the horizontal input is 0, we're not moving. And if it's -1, it'll move the opposite of the right, which is to the left. And if it's 1, we'll move to the right. So that will move us, but only at speeds of from 1 to 1. So here we have the move speed, so we can move a little faster than 1 to 1. So we'll multiply by the move speed. There you go. And then we always multiply by time dot delta time. So we get smooth movement between all computers, no matter how fast or slow they are. All right, so this command right here, this little bit of code, that should get Mr. Peabody moving. So let's test it out. I'm going to press play. And I'm going to move them left and right with the keys. And it's not working. And it's not working because I think there's an error over here. See, argument exception. Input axis horizontal is not set up. Input get axis horizon. Did I spell that correctly? Ladies and gentlemen, I did not spell that correctly because if we look here in the input manager again, project settings, input, horizontal. All right, let's just copy this here so I don't misspell it this time. And then let me put that right there, paste. There, now it's spelled correctly. Now when I press play, there shouldn't be any errors. Shouldn't be. So I'm gonna press play and the errors are gone, thank you. Now if I move to the left and the right, he moves to the left and the right. All right, so that's one thing we need for our game. The other thing we need for the game is something for him to walk on, you know? And we could do that. Let's go back to my sprites that I have here in a folder on my hard drive. And we had him walking on this called ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this here. Let me go back to my assets window. I'm going to take that ground and I'm just going to drag and drop it over here. So I have a prefab here. I have a PNG here and another PNG. I'm starting to get more files. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a folder to keep things a little organized, and anything that is a sprite right from the hard drive, I'm going to put it in a folder here for Sprite. So this is an image file. I'm just going to put it in the Sprite folder. And this is an image file. I'm going to put it in the Sprite folder. All right, so now the ground sprite, let me drag it into the scene. Now we see that if this is the game window outlined in white, that Mr. Peabody's big, like I said before. So we're going to scale him down. I could use the scale tool and just click on the white and bring him down the size, something more reasonable for the game. And then I'm going to make sure I save it, apply. So that change gets saved back to this prefab over here. See, so the prefab is the same size. When I made a change to my game object in the scene, I just pressed apply. All right, so Mr. Peabody's a little smaller, and you're wondering what happened to his bones? Well, everything shrunk down. Everything that's a child of Mr. Peabody shrinks down in size and ratio. So we have this here. Now for Mr. Peabody, since we have some grass there, let's give Mr. Peabody some physics. Now we're going to have to use everything from physics 2D, since we're in a 2D game. And let's give him a rigid body 2D, so that he has some physics and like he'll actually drop with gravity. And if I press play now with the physics, he should drop down with gravity, and yes, he does. So if you're wondering, in physics 2D, when you have a rigid body 2D, the gravity scale controls the gravity. So I could actually Just it's not the same as 3D, but the higher this number, the harder he'll fall. So now I increase it to 10, and pshoo, he pretty much looks like somebody pushed him down. Then I had it at 1. I can make it like a point 1, and then you'll see that he drops a little slower. You see? So that's how gravity works for 2D. So what was it set to originally? 1. We'll leave it at 1. Now, when he's dropping and he goes right through the ground. That's because Mr. Peabody doesn't have any colliders, and the ground doesn't have any colliders. So for the ground, let's see, we know that he's only going to be walking on top of the ground. So when I have a collider for the ground, physics 2D, there's two choices here. I guess I could have a polygon collider that totally outlines the grass, and I can't walk um, inside the grass. I can only walk around it. Or if I want to, I could use another kind of collider, knowing that I'm only going to be walking on top of the grass. It's called like an edge collider. So physics 2D edge collider. And here it is, the edge collider. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do edit collider. And a cool thing about the edge collider is you could actually go along and create as many points for the edges as you want. And right now I just made too many. But I just made too many. So how can I undo that? I don't know. I'll just start over again. Remove component. Add a edge collider again for a 2D. Here we go. So when I edit, I just want to keep it to the two edges here. I guess I'll put it in the middle of the grass a little bit so his feet, step on the grass. And here. Okay, a nice straight line. So that's a collider on there. And for collision detection, we need at least 2 colliders and a rigid body. So this is one collider here on the ground. And let's turn this ground now into a prefab. And then on Mr. Peabody, we have a rigid body. We need a collider. And then we'll have our minimum requirements for collision detection. So Mr. Peabody, I'm going to add a capsule collider because that's about the shape of Mr. Peabody right there. Nice round ball. And maybe could I edit it to be a little bit closer? Let's see. Yeah, there you go. There we go. And here's the bottom for his feet and the top for his head. So Mr. Peabody's got to press apply again to save it to the prefab. All right, so now I know that I have a collider on Mr. Peabody and I have a collider on the ground, and Mr. Peabody has a rigid body. So I have 2 colliders and a rigid body. Now when I press play, he should drop and land on the ground. And he rolled over. So he rolled over because look, the shape of his collider is like a pill. So say you don't want Mr. Peabody to roll over. You could select Mr. Peabody from the hierarchy window, and then here in the inspector window, look for the rigid body component, and there's constraints. I could constrain rotation so he doesn't roll over in the simulation. So now I press play, and he'll drop, boop, and he'll just stay right there. Okay, cool. So he's there. I got one piece of ground, and but that's not enough. So now, we basically could make a scene here, or we could make a level with the ground and Mr. Peabody. And let's see what happens if I start doing something like this. And as you know, some of these are placed a little off on purpose. I'm doing that on purpose because I want to see what happens here when there's these little bumps in the ground. Mr. Peabody's collider is, as you can see, curved at the bottom. So when he comes across these bumps and I keep moving forward, it should be able to push up and roll over instead of being rectangular with a point at the edge, and I'll just get stuck in the edge. Since there's a curve, when the collider comes here, it should bump up. Let's see what happens when I press play. Okay, so here I come, and yeah, the collider does bump up. And that's part of the reason why I picked a collider that was, circular in some form or fashion instead of just a hard rectangle. So as you can see, we can move him, and then when he gets off to the edge of the screen, we're going to have a problem because the camera is not moving. So let me just add a couple of more pieces here at the edge of the screen, maybe going up a little bit. And let's see what happens with the camera here in the game view when Mr. Peabody gets to the edge. So first of all, he's moving freely and the camera doesn't move. But when I get to the edge of the screen, you see there's more level here to go through, but I'm almost at the edge of the camera's view. So when I come to this point, this little block here is higher than I could roll over. I'm gonna have to do a jump. And two, the camera didn't follow me. So we're gonna have to do some kind of logic for the camera to follow Mr. Peabody a little bit so we never come out of screen. So what we're gonna do, sorry, I'm just cleaning my recycle bin. What we're gonna do is we're gonna add a little bit more code to Mr. Peabody. So where is it? Here's the Peabody script. Let's open it up again. And here we are back in Visual Studio. And we're gonna need to control the camera from Mr. Peabody's script so it follows Mr. Peabody. So I'm going to give the user a chance to specify the camera to me by making a public variable for camera. Okay, so first I'll have that there so you can specify the camera to me, and now I'll go back into Unity and the script should update itself after the script gets read, and there you go, this camera. So now I could take the main camera and tell the script for Peabody what the camera is. And press save and apply. Okay, so now I'll have a value for the camera. And I guess I want to know here in the beginning of the game, Mr. Peabody and the camera, they kind of have a relationship with each other. Like Peabody's here and the camera's in the middle. I'm just gonna keep track of that relationship. So I'm gonna make this variable is internal only, so it's private. I'll call it original cam offset. The original camera offset. And first I'll just have it equal 0, but this has to be a float, sorry. There, now there's no red squigglies. And now in the start function, which happens when the game starts, I'll read what the camera offset is from however, I placed it in the scene. So that offset will equal original camera offset equals Mr. Peabody transform dot position dot x. I'm really only interested in the x coordinate. And what's it gonna? I have to subtract the camera dot transform dot position dot x, and that tells me how far away the camera is from the player in the beginning. So now let's see what happens when I move. I'm gonna have to check to see if I have to move the camera along with me. So let's just make a, all right, so this is here, I'm gonna have to add some comments. This is move control right here, right? And then we're gonna have to have some camera control. Oops, boop, boop, boop. Camera control right here. All right, so for the camera control, I'll say if camera dot transform dot position dot x is less than Mr. Peabody. So the camera fell behind Mr. Peabody. Then I want the camera to move to catch up to Mr. Peabody. So here I'll just say camera dot transform dot translate, and it'll have to just keep up with Mr. Peabody. So that's going to the right. Times, and how fast should it move? It shouldn't just snap into place. I want it to move. So I'll have it move the same speed as Mr. Peabody, but just a little bit less than Mr. Peabody's speed. So only 90% of the speed. So that way there's a little bit of drag between the camera and Mr. Peabody. And then what else do I have to do? Oh, just time delta time times time dot delta time. Okay, always multiply by that. So that should keep the camera keeping up with me when I move forward. I haven't used the offset variable yet, but let's just test that part of the code. Code's processing, and I press play. And here I come, and good. The camera's following, keeping up with me. And now when I go back, it doesn't keep up with me. So now I'll just add that part for moving back. So this part was for when Mr. Peabody moves past the camera. Now I'll just have another condition to check for, else if the camera dot transform dot position dot x is greater than Mr. Peabody. No, not exactly greater than Mr. Peabody alone. Transform dot position dot x greater than Mr. Peabody, and take into consideration the offset originally. Original camera offset. There you go. Yeah, so if that happens, let me put a bracket. If that happens, then I'll translate back the other way. So let me grab this, because this is going forward. So it's almost the same code. Control paste is Control V, except over here, I go in the other direction, so I just say minus. Okay, I save that and press play after the script processes. Press play. And we got him moving, the camera moves along with him. And then if I go back the other way, the camera backs up with him too. Oh, I just went too far. Darn it. All right, so this is the beginnings. We have something to go around on, and we have a point here we can't get past, but we'll start for now. That's all we're gonna work on. That's the end of the journey tonight. In the next video, we'll add some more stuff. See you later. Bye.